Welcome to Cosmic Roadmap. I'm your host, Melissa Lambor, Reiki Astro Geoguide and author. I support endless wanderers with where they are meant to be in the world. This podcast is for the digital nomad, the avid traveler, and aspiring globetrotter who is seeking their next destination on planet Earth. Join us as we venture around the world through people's stories and how astrogeography has connected them to their planetary energies and purpose. Special guest today is Diane Denke, who is originally from Hungary, but her sustainability career has allowed her to travel around the world, visiting such countries as France, Belgium, Singapore, the UK, US, Indonesia, and most recently, Switzerland. She is currently working at Kois and has worked with SystemIQ, Bain Company, Kiva, and Accenture. Her love for travel, adventure, and the environment is what guides her every day. So we connected through a mutual friend, Danielle Hu, the Wonder Lover, on IG while you were in Indonesia. So welcome. Tell me a little bit about yourself and where your astrogeography session has led you, because I've been following your story and I love that you followed some of the guidance and where you are like at this very moment.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you for having me and really great talking to you. So it's true that a common friend of ours, Danielle, who posted about her recent astrogeography session with you. And she was like full of surprise because she was in a tiny island in Indonesia, Roti Island. And it turns out that her home line went through it. And she was like, that's incredible. I feel so at home here. And I never thought this would be possible. So incidentally, I got stuck in Roti Island in 2020 and took most of the first lockdown, second lockdown, and the pandemic hit there. So it was of course an island that was very close to my heart because I spent 8 months there completely unexpected, and I instantly just connected. But my experiences in Roti were also very, very particular. So when I heard about astrogeography, and I've been traveling the world the past 6 years, I literally lived in 6 countries and I was always on the move. And so I thought, that's interesting. I wonder where my home base could be. That's been in search for a long while. Yes. So I reached out to her and she connected us.
Amazing, amazing. And yeah, just tell me a little bit like where you are right now. You just arrived in Switzerland, and that was one of the places that we discussed. I know that you've been bouncing around Europe, and you just wanted to kind of figure out a place where you could ski and also surf, and you found that magical place in Switzerland. So yeah, tell me a little bit about how you got there.
That's right. It's really serendipitous because I literally arrived a few hours ago. I haven't even fully unpacked yet, and very unusual for a seasoned traveler like myself. But the day before the travel, I had this sudden anxiety come over me, and really like a huge fear, which I'm not very accustomed to experiencing. And it got so big that at one moment, I actually almost talked myself out of coming at all. It was very, very interesting. And so the conversation went somewhat like, oh, but you have a home in Budapest. Why do you have to keep moving all the time? I just want stability and comfort and safety. And, why you're going again into the unknown and you don't have a home and you don't know where you're going to be living at, and this constant moving takes so much energy. And I was really feeling a raw fear emotion that I can't remember the last time I felt like that strongly. So at one point, I actually got convinced by this fear not to come. And I succumbed to it. And I told myself, okay, packing finished, I'm not going anywhere. So I woke up, yesterday when I was supposed to leave, and I was paralyzed still by this fear, and I had nightmares the day before. But then I told myself, no, you absolutely must, like, you need to try it out. Not only because it's been a dream for a long time, but because of the session that I had with you.
Yes.
And I actually asked you to check a couple of places, um, in the search of would that be a good place for me to settle. And miraculously, it turned out to be a really, really wonderful place. So, not in a small part, thanks to that session, I managed to come over that fear, and here I am.
Oh, well, I'm so happy that my guidance gave you some clarity and some peace of mind too, because we just looked at your session and your astro maps right before this, and you definitely did have your sun, your Jupiter, and your Uranus energy, which is innovation, being recognized, and that energy of manifestation, and just luck and fortune. So it's just amazing that all those energies are all in that specific place that you were already envisioning in your mind.
Mm.
So, and
Yeah, and
astrogeography
also
just
I
gave
think
you
you
the
said
answer.
it's like serendipitous encounters with unusual people who, I mean, follow not the ordinary
That too.
lifestyle,
Right.
right? And I came here with the idea that since I was stuck on that tiny island in Rote, and I could experience what it takes to live by the ocean and go for a surf every single day, regardless of how good the waves are. And it just became part of life, really. And watching the sunset every day was a ritual we all did. And then we went to bed stargazing, just absorbing a starlit sky for like 10-15 minutes before you go to sleep. And it really radically transformed the way I think about my life, because I've always been a nature lover, and I've always felt most alive and invigorated when I was out there active. But the time to do that was super limited. I mean, at best to the weekends, but more commonly only to holidays. So here in Roti, what I understood is that why am I living in big cities with the hope to get to nature as soon as I have a little free time?
Mm,
Why don't I change it around, live in nature, make it part of my everyday, and then go
right.
to the big cities when I have time? So that was the big switch. And when I came back, I mean, 8 months is a long enough time to kind of like rewire your brain, I guess.
Yes.
Um, so I came back to Europe and I took another job, and I was very, very concerned about how am I going to be able to do this, because jobs tend to be in big cities. And luckily, I mean, the pandemic certainly helped, but also I found a company whose leadership is really open and willing to accommodate what makes you thrive. So I got to experiment with different living in different places in Europe. Ever since I'm back, I've been looking for where is that spot where I just feel super aligned and it's close to nature. So I've been looking for an ocean base, and I spent 3.5 months in southwest France surfing Biarritz and Hesegor area, then a bit of time in Portugal. And now I'm looking at my mountain base, because the mountains is equally important. And I really envisioned living life in some sort of a balance between time spent in the mountains and time spent by the ocean.
Amazing. And yeah, go a little deeper into your career, because it seems like it's changed over time, and now you're in sustainability. So we're sustainability sisters. I just graduated with my MBA in sustainability. So I love working with sustainable companies and helping with especially the supply chain. But you must work in a different aspects of businesses. So if you want to go a little deeper into like how you got there and like what you're working on and what projects you've been able to work on.
Sure. So I'm working at an impact investing, impact advisory firm where we are actually taking on projects who generate a very tangible social or environmental impact, and we are aiming to make them investable. So our company COIS is specialized on innovative finance and blended finance, and what that means is that we bring together public capital with private capital to de-risk some of the projects that would traditionally be only eligible for donor funding or aid funding. And I think that there's a lot of room and opportunity for this segment to grow, because when you look at the gap, financing gap that is required to meet the SDGs, and you look at the current public spending that is dedicated to this topic, or the private capital that is flowing in that direction, you realize that either of them alone is not going to be enough. So there's a real role to play in how you can use one or the other to catalyze further investment into these traditionally underfunded sectors that are going to be hugely, hugely important to make that shift to a sustainable future. And my particular passion lies in looking at how we can finance nature or regeneration of nature. So whether it's on land or marine ecosystems, I mean, unfortunately, we really are or have been destroying much of our natural habitat, and that has to be reversed.
Yeah, I love that you're working in that field of investment, because it seems like we try to do more work in the projects, or but really thinking about where the money is coming from. So I love that. And are there any projects like in mind that you're maybe traveling to for your work, or that you have traveled in the past that were really interesting?
Yeah, so I'm now overseeing our climate and sustainability practice globally, and we have offices in Europe, in Brussels, Paris, London, but also in India, in Mumbai. So I'm traveling quite a bit to India, and that's particularly very interesting again because we did not cover it in our session, but then I went on and explored those lines, as you kind of encourage, I guess, everyone to do. And very interestingly, my the love line or Venus line, which is the community, goes through India, and it's been a really fascinating phenomenon for me to watch. But I felt super close to Indians all my life, and I made lots of friends and even a lot of acquaintances, and in a very weird fashion, because look how I look, but they seem to also feel close to me in there's this I get you sense. So in my last visit to India, when one of my colleagues invited me to her mom's for lunch, and the mom was asking, oh, but shall I make the food a little more bland and not put so many spices just to accommodate her? And then she was laughing and she said, oh, well, no, Mom, Diana is just as desi as we are, but she's just blonde.
Like one of us.
She's one of us. And that was hilarious, because I literally I don't know how this came about, but it certainly is like that. And even through my yoga and meditation practice, I got tied somehow to India, very early on. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I also have my Venus line going through Goa in India, so I feel a deep connection. And I did my yoga training through a program in Goa. So
me too.
Yeah. I love it. Oh, what
But really
yeah.
looking at these lines, because honestly, like, I'm very open, I would say,
Hmm.
spiritually. So it's, I mean, at least if I meet a new idea or a concept, I'm definitely willing to learn about it. But I didn't expect this to be so accurate and kind of hitting the nail on the head, because I have quite a big repertoire to look through places where I actually lived, so that you accumulate some sort of a life experience. And I could really look into what those lines were telling me about the energy of that place and contrast it to my life experience. And I was most astonished to see that it was actually playing out just as the lines were suggesting. So I almost wish, like, oh, I wish I knew this, before I applied to a job and committed to move half around the world to some random place
Yes,
I knew
yes.
nothing about.
Yeah, because you had a pretty tough experience in Indonesia. That was one of the places that you had worked. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to divulge all the details, but I know that we looked at that particular area where Bali was very harmonious for you, but near
Mm-hmm.
Jakarta, where you had home energy, but at the same time you had all these disharmonious energies kind of fighting against that. So yeah, if
Mm-hmm.
you want to like maybe like share a little bit of like that experience of being around disharmonious what was it, Uranus, sun energy, and what was it, Jupiter, I believe, or
Chiron.
Chiron. Yeah, yeah. Like how was that?
Yeah, that was absolutely crazy. It's I literally did not want to move to Indonesia. I was working in London, and kind of like got headhunted to this opportunity, which I was really, really excited about, because it was my first main move into the sustainability field. Before, I was working as a generic management consultant, working on strategies of like big Fortune 500 companies. And I was super ready to actually make that move and put more of my energy into a field that it was closer to my heart. So the opportunity itself seemed really like the perfect fit. But ironically, they also had an office in London and in Indonesia. And they were recruiting in Indonesia. And I was not at all open to be moving half around the world, because I mean, a year before, moved back from Singapore to Europe with the clear objective to be closer to my family back in Budapest. My grandpa was still around, and I really wanted to be able to visit him, not just once a year, but more often. So when this opportunity came, I was close to the idea of moving, but because the actual work itself sounded so exciting and fascinating, over time, I talked myself into. What was interesting is that I agreed to move to Indonesia without ever having visited. I mean, I'm sorry, I've been to Bali before, but I agreed to move to Jakarta without ever having visited it.
Right.
And I really would not recommend that to anyone. I think it's good to test the place before you make a major move.
Big
So
plunge, yeah.
essentially, just to put your senses out, because the moment I arrived, it was just like nothing was going right. Like literally, it was real struggle, first of all, to find a place that I could call even a temporary home, because most of the hotel rooms in Jakarta have a single glass window, and I'm very sensitive to noise. And this is a bustling mega city. So my first room was right next to an 8-lane highway. and needless to
Wow.
say, that I was not very rested. So there was this long search for, like, where is that place where I can find some quiet from the hustle and bustle of the city? Um, how am I going to interact with my environment? And I had so many conflicts, so many clashes, from the small to the big. It was almost like unbelievable. Like, I don't think of myself as a, like a person who's like drawing in drama or is living in constant conflict. But suddenly my life started to look like that. And it was going from one frustration to the next. And I put so much energy in just trying to resolve all of this. And I have to say that it was mostly in vain. So after 3 months of struggling, I actually told my company that, look, I don't think this is working for me. I mean, I'm a nature girl. Jakarta is super hard. I mean, it has a lot of good party people. And over time, I came to understand the Indonesian culture and value a lot of that community spirit and even the chaotic hustle and bustle. But I needed a place where I could just recharge and relax. And that was not Jakarta for me. So I got actually a good deal where I was allowed to live in Bali and set up base there and only come to Jakarta for work. But it still required me to fly almost weekly. And so it was really staggering, because the moment we left Jakarta, the plane left Jakarta, I could feel the energy change and I could feel like a sense of relief and
it's almost like you were flying through those planetary energies.
Yeah,
just leaving this.
It was so markedly, noticeable. Yeah. And then Bali was an amazing place to be. And then we looked at my lines in Bali and it was harmonious sun energy.
Yeah, your sun energy, yes. Which is the recognition and illumination, yeah.
It was so different. So I actually, at that time, I did not know about astrogeography. So I explained it away with big city versus nature comparison, which I'm sure also contributed a lot. But that's a bit the story. So actually, I had to quit that company because 1 year of doing this back and forth just completely exhausted me, and I was like a shadow of myself. So I had to change.
And is that what led you to the island of Rote?
Yeah, indeed. So I was on my way home to Europe when a Balinese entrepreneur that we have supported and we built up a good relationship, just reached out and said, hey, don't you go yet. We were supposed to change the world together.
Right.
And I said, okay. I loved his vision of like regenerating the big, vast, degraded lands around the tropical belt with a bamboo-based agroforestry. And so I said, okay, sure. What can I do for you? And so we decided that I stay back for 1 or 2 months and volunteer and help him refine his strategic plan on how he can grow that vision. So that's what I did. And then 2 weeks in, he was based in Bali. So 2 weeks in, started to work in Bali together. The pandemic hit. And very quickly he realized that this is going to get really bad in Bali. And so he's going to move his family to Roti Island, where they had kind of like a summer home, a vacation home. And I said, okay, well, I'm not going to be sitting around in Bali by myself waiting for the pandemic to hit. So I'm going to go home. And I guess we are going to continue to strategize remotely. And then last minute, I was supposed to fly, I think this was on a Thursday. On Friday, they went to Roti and I was supposed to fly home to Europe. And I received a text from him where he says, hey, I talked to my wife and we really thought about it. And why don't you come and join us on this tiny island? And we will have all the time to explore the island, and it's really like paradise. And meanwhile, think about how I can make this vision into a reality. So that was the call for adventure. And there was a very good friend who became a good friend of mine, another colleague who also joined us. And off we went, thinking that it's going to be a 2 week, 3 week, maximum a month-long adventure. So I remember like boarding the plane only with my little carry-on.
Just my little backpack, coming back.
Exactly. And then the entire world shut down completely, and I find myself stuck there for not 8 months, honestly, but a couple of months, after which I voluntarily stayed longer because I saw that
not a
this is
bad
not
place to
getting
be
anywhere.
stuck. But then
Yes.
we also realized that you had some disharmonious energies that might have been at play there. So.
Yeah, and it's so incredible. So this is what's most incredible. It's a tiny island in the middle of the ocean, and I had my love line go through it. So what are the odds? It's like you're stuck in a remote place with initially just this family and the colleague of mine, and we had no idea. We didn't know anyone else around us. And before we knew it, we started to meet people and friends. And it turns out that a really beautiful community of expats and local peoples were inhabiting that part of the island, which is like the surfing corner. So very soon we had a big circle of friends, and I had the biggest birthday celebration, in a long time, which was so beautiful. And I even fell in love. And it was just this really invigorating time where I felt a sense of community like I never did before, and life just seemed really magical, and we look up these astrogeography lines, and the Venus line goes through that island, which is love, which is community.
Which makes sense, right?
So that was beautiful. And then the other aspect is that there is indeed a disharmonious Neptune.
Neptune line, which is related to spirituality. Yeah.
Yes. So I ended up having, even though I went there and I had a very strong, I would say a pretty strong spiritual practice, and I felt reasonably grounded, or albeit exhausted from all this Jakarta, Bali kind of lifestyle. But I felt pretty good. And over time, things just started to turn really weird, and a lot of like accidents happened around us, and I started to fight all the time, with my partner over really small and seemingly insignificant things, but we just never could find like a place of harmony. And over time we came in contact with someone who we learned was working with spiritual energies in a negative way, in a manipulative way, and I could really start to feel super off. And there was no explanation for that, and I couldn't repair my sense of groundedness or harmonious energy. I just could not come back to that. And at one point I felt I have to leave this island because it's just not, I'm not able to get back into the flow. And so now looking at it, and you say I have this harmonious Neptunian and spiritual energy line, right. And it's incredible that I actually met that negative spiritual energy, probably for the first time in my life, because I didn't even necessarily believe that something like that could exist.
Yeah, and naively you would look at, I have my Venus energy there, it's going to be amazing for love, but that disharmonious energy really kind of threw things off. So yeah, it's amazing. And for the future, we spoke about you going to Hawaii and really tapping into your sun energy there, and possibly, just trying to write the story that happened in Indonesia.
Oh, yes. So the whole small island adventure was really, really incredibly serendipitous. And so often I found myself thinking like, wow, like I don't recognize this as my life. Like, it just felt like there is a story here that is being manifested through me and through us all there.
Yes.
That needs to be told at one point. And it even felt that I'm living this story, which I identified with, but I mean, there were aspects where I was certainly not my usual self. Like, I'm relatively introverted. I enjoy quiet time in nature. I love reading books. I'm very introspective. I like long, deep conversations, one-on-one with people or a small group of people. And there I find myself, often in the middle of parties 4 times a week and with a giant community and just having like really living a super different kind of energetic story. And on top of that, there were so many adventures and encounters, which were, incredible. Like we were chased by local guards in a mangrove forest that was closed down. And later on, we learned it was like fully inhabited by saltwater crocodiles. And we were running through these fields, like
goodness.
not knowing like who is going to chase us more. And then we had like, like we drove into a big hole with a car, and the local police had to like escort us out. And there were like lots of surfing adventures and fishing adventures. But even more, it's not just my story and my friend, but as I started to speak to people on that island and really understand the stories of all those totally random mix of people that ended up there during the pandemic, I just realized like, wow, this is incredible. Like everyone had such a unique, serendipitous way of ending up here. So I need to write a book about it. And well, I didn't, because as I said, it ended in a really disharmonious way. And it took me a long time to come back and find my energy again. And of course, it ended in a heartbreak, which I'm sure is great for a story, but I needed some time to
process, of course.
Yeah. And so that story needs to be born at a later stage. So
I was going to say that the card that I pulled today was the word wants to be written. And I don't know if you can actually see.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? That's incredible.
I think that message was for you.
Not intimidating at all. Not intimidating. So Hawaii is just incredible again, because I went there a few years ago when I was working in San Francisco. And I have to say that I arrived with a lot of those maybe judgmental or preconceived ideas of like, oh yeah, Hawaii, it's so American. Everyone just like, it's like, it's like the American way of like holidaying with big hotels and lots of merchandise and commercial interest. So I was like, yeah, I'd want to go there. I need to see it once, but I wasn't expecting anything particularly strong. So, the moment we landed, I had to throw out all these ideas because it was nonsense, and it was totally different. The islands had a really, really strong spiritual energy. And nature is just absolutely incredible. And we managed to travel to the Big Island, Kauai and Maui, in a span of 6 days or 7 days. So it was pretty intense. But I remember that when we were in Maui, I just thought like, okay, I have to come back to this island, spend at least 6 months there, and write a book. And I had no idea what book. I'm not an author. It was this thought just appeared out of nowhere. It was really odd, and there was something magical about about those islands. Like, it's just so strongly positive, invigorating, life-affirming energy that I became like a constant fan. And basically, that's why I asked you, like, can you check Hawaii for me? But almost a bit jokingly, because it's super far from Europe and
Right.
it's such a cliche. Yeah, people want to live in Hawaii, and when they
Yes.
want to escape
Yes.
the harsh life. But then you showed me that I had these lines going through those tiny islands yet
and
again.
you had a circle, which is like the power center of that particular sun line. So that's like the strongest point on that sun line. So that feeling of recognition, being seen, is the strongest in that particular area, which is very rare for people to have that power center over over certain areas. Mine tend to be in the middle of the ocean. So the fact that yours was actually on land, you were able to tap into it, was it was a blessing.
On a cruise ship and tell them
But
to circle around.
Right. But you can also work with that energy from a distance. So just, tapping into that energy that you felt when you were there allows you to harness that sun energy wherever you are. So it's beautiful that astrogeography allowed you to see why you had such a strong connection there.
Yeah. So it's still in my life plan to establish, some sort of a base there, especially now that surfing has become such an important part of my life, that I'm willing to shift everything else around it.
And that was one of the major reasons that you went to Switzerland, because you could ski and also surf, right? There's like a facility that allowed you both.
Yes, which is hilarious, honestly. Like, yes, they say this is the best surfing that you can get in the Alps. And I'm sure it's true. It's an artificial wave pool. And I actually rented a place, 15 minutes away, envisioning that I will surf here, but I was supposed to come a little earlier. And now that it got postponed, they just closed for maintenance, which I guess is a good thing because the water froze. So that's not really...
Can't really surf in those conditions.
It's not very enticing. But nevertheless, it exists and it's here, and I'm hoping to be able to stick around this region for a little longer.
I'm so happy to hear that, and thank you for sharing your story today. I'm so excited to see that book in the future. maybe you'll go to Hawaii to write it. Yeah.
I'll make sure to send you a copy.
Exactly. So thank you for being on here today. And I just leave you with this quote: lineage goes beyond your ancestors. You are meant to connect to the cosmos, so you may finally find your cosmic family. So until next time, thank you. Thank you for listening to Cosmic Roadmap. If you're curious about astrogeography and where you're meant to be on the planet, go to cosmicroadmap.com to download your free passport to purpose. You can also book a session with me where we can explore your own cosmic roadmap and chart your next destination in business, love, and life.